$487 million. That's the number lighting up your phone screen right now. Inside a laundromat that smells like fabric softener and burnt lint, and you still haven't said a single word out loud. It's a Sunday night. Your dryer at home has been broken for 11 days, which is the only reason you're here, folding a stranger's static charge towels next to a vending machine that only takes exact change. You bought the ticket 4 days ago on a whim, the same week you told your brother you were doing fine for probably the 9th time this year. You open the numbers app out of habit. The way you check a score you don't expect has changed. The first number matches. You tell yourself that happens. The second number matches. Your stomach does something you don't have a word for yet. By the 4th number, you've stopped folding. By the 6th, you're just standing there, one hand still holding someone else's warm t-shirt, staring at a phone that is calmly informing you that you are now worth more than every house on your block combined, times 100. You don't gasp. You don't call anyone. The woman 2 dryers down is watching something on her phone with one earbud in, completely unaware that 18 inches away from her, one life just ended and a different one just started. You fold the ticket in half, then in half again, until it fits inside the zipped inner pocket of your jacket, the one you never use because you always lose whatever you put in there. Some older, quieter part of you already understands that this ticket is not something you post about tonight. You drive home with a laundry basket rattling on the passenger seat like nothing happened, past the same gas station, the same church marquee that's been advertising a fish fry since March, the same pothole you've hit every day for 2 years and never bothered fixing because $200 felt like too much to spend on it last month. Your porch light is on. Your partner Dana's car is in the driveway, exactly where it always is on a Sunday. You sit there for almost 5 minutes before you go inside, doing the kind of math people do when they're not really doing math. $487 million. The number 3 different billboards on your commute have been flashing for 6 weeks. The one you and your brother joked about the way people joke about things they've fully given up on ever happening to them. You carry the laundry basket inside. You kiss Dana hello like it's any other Sunday. And underneath the small talk about dinner, you're already doing the only math that actually matters tonight. How long you can hold something this size without saying it out loud, and what it costs you the second you do. 3 days later, you're sitting across from a state attorney named Warren Calloway, on the 14th floor of an office building in Tampa with a view of the bay you can't focus on. His receptionist didn't ask why you were there, which tells you he sees people like you more often than his modest little website would suggest. He doesn't touch the ticket. First thing, he says, don't sign the back of it yet. You look down at it, folded in your pocket for 3 days now, and realize you almost had. Signing it makes it yours publicly, permanently, the second anyone photographs it. Instead, he slides a claim form across the desk, and near the bottom, small enough you'd have missed it on your own, there's a single checkbox. Prize winner elects to remain anonymous. Florida allows it, he explains, but only if you take the lump sum instead of the annuity. Annuity payments release your name by law within days, no exceptions. Lump sum and anonymity, or 30 years of checks with your name attached. There is no version where you get both the yearly payments and the silence. You ask what the lump sum actually comes to. He turns his laptop around. The jackpot on the sign was $487 million. The cash value on his screen is $238.6 million. You feel your stomach drop the way it does on a fast elevator, watching nearly half the number disappear before you've spent a cent of it. He explains the next step isn't glamorous. A trust drafted this week under a name that isn't yours. You land on Salt Marsh Holdings after a stretch of mangroves behind the house you grew up in. The trust claims the prize. Its name goes on the public record, if anyone ever bothers to look. Yours never will. Who else knows, he asks, and it isn't small talk. He needs the number. Dana, eventually. Not your mother. Not yet. Not your brother, who would tell your mother by lunch. You tell him 2 people, and he writes it down like a variable in an equation he's already solved 100 times, one where every additional name is a point of failure. 9 days after that, you're back in your car in your own office parking lot, 5 minutes before your lunch break ends, refreshing a banking app that hasn't updated all week. Your badge is still clipped to your shirt. On paper, you're still just a person with a 9 to 5 and 41 minutes left on your lunch. Then the number loads. $181,336,000. Maya, the accountant Warren brought onto the file, walks you through it that same afternoon in the calm, unhurried voice she probably uses for worse news than this. The IRS takes 24% off the top automatically. The second the trust claims the prize, no negotiating, no waiting. On $238.6 million, that's $57.3 million, gone before you've bought a single thing. But Maya is careful to tell you that 24% isn't the real number, just a deposit. A win this size lands you in the top federal bracket, 37%, and the rest comes due when you file. She does the math out loud on a legal pad. $238.6 million at 37% is $88.3 million owed to the federal government. Full stop, no matter how you slice the timeline. Which means the number in your account right now is a placeholder. The real number, after everything the IRS is owed, is $150.3 million. There's a small mercy in it, and Maya makes sure you understand it as one. Florida doesn't tax lottery winnings, no state income tax at all, one of only 9 states that can say that. If you bought that ticket 2 states north, you'd be watching another 8 or 9% disappear on top of the federal hit. Instead, what the IRS doesn't take, you actually keep. You sit with $150.3 million a long moment. It doesn't feel like winning. It feels like surviving something with your bank balance intact. Your lunch break ends in 90 seconds. You lock the phone, straighten your badge, and walk back inside like nothing happened, because as far as the 11 people in that office know, nothing did. The first purchase isn't a house or a car anyone would notice. It's a 1969 muscle car you've wanted since you were 17, bought at a private auction 2 hours from home for $95,000, paid through an LLC the seller has never heard of and will never visit. It doesn't go in your driveway. It goes into a rented garage unit across town, under a cover, visited maybe twice a month. The bracelet is different. That one you actually give to Dana. A custom diamond tennis bracelet, $28,000, bought in a shop where nobody blinks at a wire transfer from an entity they don't recognize. You tell her it's a bonus, a certification stipend finally paying off after 2 years of night classes. She believes you, because there's no reason not to, and you watch her turn her wrist in the light with a kind of joy that makes your chest hurt a little, because it's the first real lie you've told her since the laundromat. None of it, not the car under a cover, not the bracelet on her wrist, is the part that actually matters. That happens at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday, on a laptop at your kitchen table after Dana's gone to bed. Maya walks you through the first real move over the phone that afternoon. 40% of the $150.3 million, just over $60 million, into a low-cost total U.S. stock market index fund. The same boring instrument every actual financial advisor tells actual people to buy, and almost nobody does. There's no wrapping paper, no dealer nodding approvingly. Just a number moving from one account to another, buying a tiny slice of thousands of companies you'll never personally think about again, quietly compounding whether you check on it or not. It's the least glamorous thing you buy all month, and somehow the only one that doesn't need an explanation. 5 months in, Dana is home alone when a certified envelope arrives from a marine insurance company, addressed to Salt Marsh Holdings Trust, a name she doesn't recognize on an envelope she almost doesn't open. Inside is a policy for a 24-foot fishing boat, insured value $180,000, a boat she has never seen, sitting in a marina slip you've paid for in cash every month since spring. You come home from work to find her sitting at the kitchen table with a letter flattened in front of her. "What is this?" she says, and it isn't really a question, it's the sound of someone doing math they don't want the answer to. You don't tell her everything, not that night. Not the $487 million, not Warren's office, not the trust. You tell her the smallest true thing you can manage, that you won something, that you've been figuring out how to hold it without it changing everything between you before you'd even worked out how to hold it yourself. "How long?" she asks. 5 months, you say, and you watch that number land on her the way the withholding number landed on you in that parking lot. Not disbelief exactly. Something heavier. She doesn't react to the size of the number the way you expected. She reacts to the 5 months. "I've been splitting a burrito with you for 5 months," she says, "while you had a boat sitting somewhere, I've never seen. You don't defend it. There isn't a version of the defense that doesn't sound like exactly what it was. Nobody throws anything. She goes to bed early. You sit alone at the table where the index fund confirmation once felt like the safest thing you owned, and you finally understand what Warren meant when he said every name you tell is a point of failure. You'd counted Dana as the safe one. You just hadn't counted on the cost of making her wait. A year later, you're standing in a half-finished house on a quiet inlet 20 minutes from where you grew up, bought through the trust for $6.4 million. Off-market, no listing photos anywhere online. Dana runs her hand along a stud wall where the kitchen will be. And for the first time since the letter, she looks like she's imagining a life instead of interrogating one. Maya has kept walking you through where the rest of the $150.3 million actually lives. 20%, just over $30 million, sits in a ladder of municipal bonds, boring, steady, and largely tax-free income specifically because you're now the kind of person who needs to think about things like that. 15%, $22.5 million, bought a quiet stake in a manufactured home community outside Ocala, 300 lots, rent collected whether the stock market has a good month or not. 10%, $15 million, went into a small regional chain of coin-operated car washes, the kind of asset that doesn't make headlines and doesn't need a website, it just runs. Another 10% stays in short-term treasury bills, cash you can actually reach without selling anything else. And 5%, $7.5 million, funds a donor-advised fund under the trust, quietly supporting a scholarship program at the community college near your mother's house and a free health clinic 2 counties over. None of it has your name on it. None of it ever will, unless you decide someday that it should. Run forward 10 years at a blended 7% return, and $150.3 million becomes just under $296 million without you lifting a finger, purely from money that was already working while you were still clocking in and out of a job you eventually gave notice on with a reason vague enough not to raise anything. Your mother still doesn't know. At Sunday dinner, she mentions, almost in passing, that she's still paying off the loan on her minivan and might put off fixing the roof another season. You say something useless about interest rates and pass the potatoes, because saying anything real means saying everything. Your brother almost gets it out of you at the same table, 3 glasses of wine in, joking about the lottery billboard that's still up on the highway, the one you two used to joke about together. You laugh along, right on cue, the way a person laughs when they're being asked a question they've already rehearsed the wrong answer to. He has no idea he's 2 questions away from an answer that would change how he sees you forever. Neither of them will hear it from you tonight. The trust holds it. The car wash chain generates it. The index fund and the muni ladder compound it quietly in the background. And the house on the inlet will be finished by spring. On paper, it's exactly the outcome Warren promised you 14 months ago in that office over the bay. Protected, anonymous, growing. What it costs is something no spreadsheet tracks. It's watching your mother worry about a roof she can't afford and saying nothing. It's your brother's joke landing an inch from the truth and you laughing like it's nothing because it has to be nothing in front of him at least. 14 months after the win, your dryer at home breaks again, and out of pure habit, not necessity, you find yourself back at the same laundromat on a Sunday night, folding your own towels next to the same vending machine that still only takes exact change. You could buy the building. You fold towels instead, because some part of you needs one place left where the math doesn't follow you inside. You know now what that little checkbox on the claim form actually bought you. Not the boat, not the house on the inlet. The silence itself, chosen on purpose, over and over, every single time someone asks what's new. The fortune sits exactly where you built it, quiet and untouchable. What doesn't sit as easily is the version of you that used to answer a simple question without checking it first. There's always a next conversation waiting, closer than you think.